Cascading style sheets provide a common technique for creating a consistent look and feel across a site. So you may wonder, how is this different than themes? Well, CSS integrates with HTML. It does its work on the client side. When the server receives a request for a page with a reference to a cascading style sheet, the web server sends both the page and the style sheet to the client browser. The browser then merges the content together to create formatted output. You can use CSS to create styles for HTML elements, and you can also create named styles. But think what that means. It means styles apply to elements, not anything else, just elements. It could apply to ID-based elements or class-based element styles, but you are limited to working with elements. So what's wrong with CSS? Well, CSS focuses on styles associated with HTML, not ASP.NET controls. For example, what if you wanted in the grid view to have an alternating row color? Well, there's nothing CSS can do about that because CSS has no way to make itself apply to every other row in a grid. That's not going to happen. The answer is ASP.NET Themes. Themes describe the layout and behavior of controls in a declarative manner. They're like style sheets, but they focus on ASP.NET controls instead. Let's compare themes and CSS. ASP.NET applies themes on the server, as opposed to on the client for CSS. Themes apply to ASP.NET controls. CSS provides styles for HTML elements. And sure, lots of ASP.NET controls map to HTML elements, but not all of them by any means. Themes allow you to specify behaviors for controls and any of their properties, even those that have nothing to do with HTML elements. Themes can be applied dynamically. You can specify a theme at runtime. Try that with CSS. Themes cascade, but not quite like CSS. CSS inheritance is a very popular feature, and it makes it very flexible. But themes override the design time behavior for controls. That's how they cascade. You can set up design time behavior, and you can override that behavior at runtime using a theme. And there's no need to give up CSS to use themes. They work really well together. So as you'll see in the example, mix and match the two features. The app_themes folder within the project stores themes. Each theme will be in its own named folder, and you refer to the theme by its name. Within each folder, skin files define control behavior. That is, there are skins that define the behavior of controls. Now, you can also create global themes if you want. For file system-based sites, you put them in this folder. I won't read it out. You can check it yourself on the screen. And for IIS-based sites, you put the global themes in this folder, and then they apply to multiple sites. Remember, if you place them in the app_themes folder within a project, those themes apply only to that project. Let's stop for a moment and look at how themes work in a sample project. I've loaded the sample project for this chapter called Master Pages Themes, and you see that it includes an app_themes folder. Within that folder, we have pre-created 3 themes for you. There's the black theme, and it must have some black images on it or something. We have the spring theme and the summer theme. And you can see that there's a number of different features shown off here. First of all, within each theme, and the name of the folder defines the name of the theme, within each theme you'll find one or more skin files. This skin file defines all the formatting for this theme. And you can look at it and see that it's just formatting instructions for various controls, label and grid view, for example. You can also group them into separate skin files if you like. Just label in this one, grid view in this one, and then at runtime, ASP.NET renders the page and retrieves various skins from the folder. Doesn't all need to be in one file. In addition, you can see that a theme can include images, a skin file, and even a style sheet. Here's a style sheet for this skin. And in here, we have layout for lots of different items within the skin. We'll come back and examine these in more detail later on, but I wanted to stop now and look at how themes are laid out within a project in the app_themes folder. To create a theme, you must create files containing one or more skins. There has to be at least one of these per theme. You saw in our demonstration that you can have one or two or multiples, but you got to have at least one. Themes can also contain CSS files and images, and skins define the behavior of controls. So you've seen all of that fly by in our demonstration. We'll look at it in more detail as we work through the sample. Skin files contain simply markup describing control behavior. The markup is exactly like the markup in standard pages. As a matter of fact, you'll find that you can just copy and paste markup from a page to a skin with some minor changes. The deal is you have to remove everything from your skin except runtime behavior properties. It'll become clear once you see an example. Imagine you have a label with the following markup. This markup describes the ID, the run@server, the text for the label, and we have some formatting properties: width, height, font size, border color, border style, border width, font bold, font name, forecolor, and so on. So we've specified a lot of information about this label, and it looks something like that. Now I'd like to convert that into skin information. And how do you do that? Well, first, you need to find the properties that aren't layout specific, that apply to an individual instance of a label. Because remember, whatever you do has to apply to all labels. So we need to remove the ID and the text property and leave us with just this. This becomes what we can place into the skin file, and this defines the behavior of a group of controls that are all labels. To create a theme, you must note that all controls of the same type appear the same. You can override this behavior. We'll discuss it later. But in general, all controls that are the same type appear the same. That's the point of a theme, right? You get some consistency. Only one skin per control type so far. That's our demo we'll look at. We have one skin per control type. But you can create named skins as well that apply to particular instances of controls. Let's step back and see how we can now apply a theme. There are a number of different ways you can apply a theme to a page. One way is to do it at design time. Let's open this page up in the Designer and look at its properties. On the Properties window for the page, we can set the theme here. You'll see a list of all the themes that appear within that app_themes folder. For example, if I choose spring, that theme has been applied to this page. Let me save everything and view this in a browser. And you can see that we're getting the spring pastel colored themes here. Let me put it away and try again. And let's choose a different theme. Let's choose summer. Come back here, view in browser. And now we have the summer colors instead. So it's easy to modify the theme attached to a page by just modifying the theme property in the Designer. You can also set the theme on a page directive within the source view. Let's come up here to source view. And here you can see we have a theme set here. We can set it to something else. Let's change it to black. Let me save it and view this page in the browser. And there's the black theme. Clearly has some issues with the font sizes and so on, but you can see it does change the look of the entire page. And clearly what's going on when we set the theme property here is that we're modifying it in that page directive, and you can see that happen right there. The last way you can do it is to set the page.theme property programmatically. The only tricky part is you need to do this in the pre-init event so that it occurs before the page begins to render. We'll see an example of this later on. So you've seen three ways to do it. Set the theme here, here, or programmatically in the pre-init event of the page. Now remember, there are a number of different ways to do this. We can have one skin file per control, or one skin file for the entire theme. It's up to you how you organize this, and you can mix and match those concepts as well. Well, let's stop and now create a new theme. To do this, we need to start by creating a new folder within the app_themes folder. To do that, I will right-click, add new item, and I'll create a new skin file. I'll choose skin file, and I'll name it winter.skin. Now this is pretty cool. Now the language here doesn't matter because we're not putting any code in here. I'll click add, and it's pretty smart. Visual Studio does a smart thing. It creates a new folder with the same name as the skin file you just created. You can obviously rename them. There's nothing special about the folder names or the skin names. It's all up to you, but by default, that's the behavior they take on. I'm going to take some skin information from customers.aspx, so I'll view it in the designer. The first thing I want to do is modify the layout of this grid, and I'll set it for rainy day, which is apropos for a winter skin where I come from. There we are. And now let's take this label and modify some of its properties. I'll change, for example, its, background color, and make it be Gainsborough. There we go, it's just another color. The border color, I'll set to be, didn't like that. Let's set it to Gainsborough. And set this to be, 999999, just to pick a color. And the border style is solid. The border width, I'll make 2 pixels. There we go. And the fore color, let's make black. I've just picked some various settings so I can work with this. And now we're going to copy the label and the grid into our skin file. So let's go to Source View. Didn't like one of my properties. Which one didn't you like? Yeah, didn't like that, did they? Okay. Let's just pick a color then. I'll pick that one. Okay, let's go to Source View. And now let's take the label and the grid. There we go. Copy them to the clipboard. And now go to our skin and paste them in. And there we are. We can format these a little better. Did you know that you can select data in HTML view in the markup view and press Control-K, Control-F, and it should format it. Of course, it doesn't fix up all my little errors here, but if you have some formatting issues within your markup, that keystroke will help. I don't need the line break here. I will format these myself by untabbing it so I can see more of it. There we go. And now we need to remove any of the properties that aren't formatting specific, like ID. That wouldn't apply to all labels. Text has to go. That doesn't apply to all labels. Down here in the grid view, we need to remove things like the ID here and the data source ID, because that applies to a specific grid. And I think that's it. Everything else is all about formatting. Great. So let's save this thing. There we are. Let's close this without saving anything. And now let's open Customers and try to apply that theme. Well, Customers is kind of a special page. It has code that runs that allows me to select a theme and apply it. We'll look at this code later on, but if I apply the winter theme, there we are. That's the new theme we just created. It showed up in the drop-down list because it appears as a folder _app themes. Of course, it's fun to try and apply other themes as well. There we go. But choosing winter uses the theme that we just created, and it proves that all you have to do is drop information into the skin file in a folder _app_themes, and it's available to you as a theme for your web page. Now notice on this page that both labels appear the same. Both the Select label, and it should be Select Theme, you can't see it because it's too big, the text is too big, and the Customers label appear formatted the same way. Right now, the theme doesn't differentiate between one label and another. You can override this behavior, and we'll show you how to do that later on, by creating named skins and applying a particular named skin to a control. But by default, skins aren't named, and so they apply to every instance of a control. You're welcome to organize skins any way you like. At runtime, ASP.NET merges all the skin files it finds within a given folder, and together they become the current theme. In our example, spring and winter themes use a single skin file. Summer theme contains multiple skin files. In that case, there's a separate skin file for each control type. And again, you can refactor this any way you like. You can organize the contents in ways that make sense for you and for the particular theme. When you apply a theme, ASP.NET overrides all the properties for each control, well, at least each control that has a corresponding skin within the theme, and also only for each property that's specified within the skin. If you don't specify a property in the skin, then the design time property setting gets used. In other words, properties that aren't overridden by the theme remain unchanged. If there are conflicts, the theme always wins. What if you want to have a design time property which overrides the theme? You can do this simply, but only on a page-by-page basis. There is a style sheet theme property, and you can set that property rather than the theme property. And if you do that, ASP.NET handles the theme as a style sheet, and that means it applies the theme and then handles property set at design time, just like it would with CSS. So if you choose to set the style sheet theme property to the name of the theme, you'll find that design time properties will override properties set in the theme. Let's prove a point. I'm going to come to the Label control here, go to the Properties window, and set, for this label, on the Font property, I'll choose Strikeout to be true. So Strikeout shows there. Now I didn't set the Strikeout setting within the theme, any of my themes, so if I view this page now, no matter which theme I apply, that strikeout is still there. Because the theme doesn't tell us what to do with strikeout, it just always appears. You can see that the Customers label has its text struck out. Now let's go apply a theme differently. I'll click here, bring up the Properties window, make sure the theme is empty, and it is, and I'll set the Style Sheet theme to Spring. Remember how Style Sheet theme works. That treats the theme as if it was a style sheet. So it does its theming after all the properties are set at design time, which means you can see its behavior within the Visual Studio Designer. So here we can see our spring theme has been applied, and you can see that the strikeout is still there. Remember that the theme applies a background color to our label, and normally the theme would override any properties we set at design time. But let's go now to our label and set a background color. I'll choose red. No, red's not going to be good. I'll choose a pastel yellow. There we are. And let's now run this and see what happens. Well, you can see what's going to happen. Because we've set the Style Sheet theme property to be the theme, that means that properties set at design time override those applied in the theme. So if I run this, it should look the same. You'll see that even at runtime, we've applied the theme at a different point in the life cycle of the page. We've applied the theme before ASP.NET renders the controls with their local properties. So any local properties then override the settings of the theme. Now if I apply a theme now, you'll see that even now, our local settings override the behavior of that theme. You can use both the theme and the style sheet theme properties once you're comfortable with all this overriding behavior. Make sure you play with it a little so you understand the concepts before attempting to mix and match in that way. You can completely opt out of the theming process if you want. For each control, all you have to do is come to the control, say this one, and set the Enable Theming property to false. There it is. And now, any theme we apply shouldn't apply to that. Now let me turn off this style sheet theme thing because that's confusing the issue. Let's remove this. And let's see what happens if for this control, I have set the Enable Theming property to false. So let's run the page. And now apply a theme. You can see that the theme doesn't apply to that control anymore because we've disabled theming, we've opted out of theming for that control. Applying a skin for a particular control type affects all instances of that control type. What if you want multiple label controls to appear differently? You can create multiple skins for the same control type, but if you do that, you have to supply the skin ID attribute for each non-default skin. That is, you can have a default skin for all the labels except have a different skin with the skin ID attribute set for some of the labels. You assign the appropriate skin ID property for each control. You can also use the default skin by just not supplying the skin ID property value. You must set the skin ID for each control that you don't want to have the default behavior, or it will have the default behavior. I think that makes sense. Well, let's try an example that shows off using named skins. I'm going to modify the spring.skin to add a named skin. So here, let me come up to my label setting and copy it and make a new copy, say, here. Well, obviously, we don't want to have two default label settings within the skin. That's not going to work. As a matter of fact, if we try to build it, Visual Studio will complain, telling us we already have a default setting for the label in the skin. So we need to add a skin ID attribute. We'll do that first by modifying the layout of this thing. I'll set the back color to be red, and maybe the fore color to be yellow, a lovely combination. And I'll set the skin ID attribute to be, what can I call it? Bright. There we go, because it's brightly colored. Now let's save everything. I'll click that button to do it. Sure, I'll save the solution file, no problem. Let me put this away for now. And let's go to customers.aspx. Let me modify this and remove all the settings I've made on this. So I need to modify its back color. Just remove that so we get the default settings. Fore color. There. Border color. And what else? I think that's, oh, strikeout, that's right. There we go. So we put it back to the normal settings here. What we also want to do now is set the skin ID property of this control. There it is. Let's change it to bright. Now that we've set the skin ID, let's also make sure that the style sheet theme property has been removed. It has. Well, let's see what it looks like now. Let me choose spring, and you probably have a good idea what's going to happen. When I apply this, you see that this label gets its theming information from the named skin named bright. This one has no skin ID set, so it gets its value from the default setting for the label within the theme. Now, of course, you can use the same skin ID on multiple controls. That's the beauty of this. You can have 40% of your labels use one or maybe the default theme, and some other percentage use a named skin. That makes it easier for you to create consistency within your page. You should note, however, that you can't have two skin IDs with the same name within the same theme. So it's not a many-to-many situation. You can have one skin ID with a certain name in a theme, but you can use it multiple times on any page that uses that theme. Themes make it easy to reuse images on your pages. What if you want the same navigation buttons on all your pages? Well, the black theme has an images folder, and those images provide the behavior. Notice that here we have 4 image buttons defined in the theme. This is coming from the skin file. And you'll see that each of them has a different skin ID. They all apply to image buttons, but each one of them uses a different image URL to define the behavior of the particular button. Now, you do need to watch out for locations. They're relative to the theme folder, not the page location. So when you specify the image URL, remember that you're specifying an address that's relative to the location of the theme, not of the page where you're using the theme. That makes sense once you think about it. ASP.NET automatically inserts the app_themes \theme name when it needs to render that image at runtime. Let's look at an example of using the black theme to see how this works out. The sample page, imagebuttons.aspx, includes 4 image button controls. You can see them there. And has its theme property, let's go look and see, set to black. So let's investigate the black theme to see what's going on. Up here in the black theme, we have an images folder. We have button first, which is, I'm loading it there, a little button, button last, button next, and button previous, all images that we're going to display on that page. And within the skin file, here, we lay out the 4 buttons you just saw on the PowerPoint slide. There they are, the skin ID of first, previous, next, and last. There's a whole lot more defined in this theme that we're not really using on that page, but we are using those 4 buttons. If we go back here and look at each individual button, we'll see that for this one, the skin ID is set to first. For this one, skin ID is set to previous, and so on. So now if I view this in a browser, there are 4 buttons. I guess I could have laid it out a little better on the page, but you get my point. That is, we're getting these 4 image buttons based on the fact that we have 4 different skin IDs, and each skin ID refers to a skin that defines the layout of a button with a different image on it. You can certainly combine CSS and themes together. Note that applying the black theme changes the appearance of the entire page and its layout. You saw that, right? The buttons moved into the center, the background became gray, and all that's coming from the style sheet. If a style includes a style sheet, as that one did, ASP.NET automatically includes a reference to the style sheet in the page. Because it finds the style sheet in the folder, it uses it. The black theme then combines a cascading style sheet and skins together to give you the benefits of both. Now, before leaving the discussion of themes, there are 2 more important issues we need to talk about: applying themes globally and applying themes at runtime. Rather than applying a theme to each individual page, you can apply a theme globally across the entire site. In your web.config file, you can add markup like this. That is, within the system.web element, add an element named Pages, and make sure you have an attribute named Theme with the value of the theme you'd like to apply across every page in the site. Of course, you can then override this theme for any given page if you want to, but that sort of spoils the point. If you're looking for consistency, you want every page in your site to use the same theme. And this is how you set it up. Obviously, there will be more stuff in your web.config file, but this marks out a map to where you need to add that Pages element with the theme attribute. You can also add the Style Sheet theme attribute in place of, or in addition to, the theme attribute. And if you only want certain pages in your site to have a theme, I said that's not a good idea, but you may choose that that's the way you want your site to work. You create a new folder, copy pages in the web.config to that new folder, and then set up the theme for those pages. All you have to do is change all your navigation to look for those pages in a new folder instead of where they used to be. And what if you want all but a single page to be themed? It's easy to turn off theming for a specific page. Just like you turned off Enable Theming on a particular control, you can add the Enable Theming attribute in the page directive for a page and set it to be false. And so for that particular page, there will be no theming. If you want to apply themes at runtime, you can set the page's theme or Style Sheet theme property in code. The tricky part is you have to do this before the page is rendered. Generally, what people do is place this in the page's pre-init event handler. Now, the sample retrieves a list of all the local themes and allows you to select a theme at runtime. It doesn't have to be this complex. You don't have to let the user select the theme. You can just simply set the theme property in a single line of code. That is, page.theme equals the name of the theme. Well, let's look at the example to see how it does its job. I've loaded the code for the sample page, customers.aspx. Down here in the pre-init event handler, there we are, I've got some code to do the work with setting the theme. Now, I've set it up so that I put into a session variable the selected theme. So if we load the page after already having set the theme, it will remember the theme. So we place it into the selected theme session variable and retrieve it from there as well. So here we check to make sure if session and then the selected theme variable isn't null, that means we've already set it. In that case, we will set the selected theme variable from the session and put it into page.theme. And then we set the selected theme to be null, so the next time around it is null and we'll have to set it. We'll see how that code works out in the page load event handler. This is the code that sets the page theme. How can we then fill the list of themes? Well, up here, we get directory info using server.mappath to retrieve the app_themes folder. We set the data text field in our drop-down list to be the name of that directory info information, and then set the data source of the drop-down list to be the results of calling the getDirectories method. We call the databind method, and that drop-down list now contains a list of all the folders within the app_themes folder. Now, if the page theme, that is page.theme property, isn't null or empty, well, we set the selected value in the drop-down list to be that theme. So when we first open the page, if we've already set a theme, then it shows up as the selected theme in the drop-down list. What happens when we click the button to apply the theme? In that case, we take the selected value of the drop-down list and put it into the session variable so that when the page refreshes, it can use this value because we're about to refresh the page. And we do that by calling server.transfer to transfer to this exact page. By transferring to the page, we cause the page to do a total refresh and the theme becomes applied. Let's review, sort of going in circles here. We've asked the page to refresh. We get down to here. If the session variable named selected theme isn't null, and it shouldn't be because we just set it here, if it isn't null, then we'll put the value into page.theme, store it away there, and clear out the session variable. So that next time we come up here, we can place the selected value into that session variable. And if someone attempts to refresh the page while we're looking at it but didn't press that submit button, then we'll run this code. This will be null, and we won't attempt to set the theme again. There's a lot of logic here that really has nothing to do with the one single line of code that does the job, and that's this one line of code. To review how this works, let's run the page. Right now, there's no theme applied to the page. I choose one, click Apply. At that point, we set the session variable, and in the pre-init event handler, we retrieve that session variable. We, at that point, apply the theme and set the session variable to be null again. So if I, for example, just press F5 to refresh the page, it doesn't attempt to reapply the theme because at this point, the session variable is nothing at all. At this point, you've seen the most complicated way to set the theme at runtime. All you really need to do is set page.theme equal to the name of the theme you'd like to use and do it in the page_pre-init event handler.